right. So we will go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for attending today and taking a little bit of time out of your busy days. My name is Alan Kirk. I'm the CIO for Texas A&M Agrilifeit. I've been in this position for the last 12 years roughly, and I've seen a lot of changes in Agrilifeit. Currently, if you're with the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, you're either in the process of being migrated or have been migrated to the Agrilifeit IT environment. And if you've missed our presentations before that we've done in the past month, we've had a series of training events that talked about the strategy and the purpose of the migration and the benefits. And I encourage you to go to our website and look at those. We can post a link directly to that in the chat here in a moment in case you missed those, and that might give you some background if you haven't seen that information. But for today, our topic is focusing on best practices around handling of files in the Agrilifeit Office 365 environment. We realized that a lot of the employees within the college were, per a survey we conducted, were managing and saving files in various different ways throughout the departments. Most of that was because each department did IT differently, and over the course of the years, TAMO IT introduced different solutions for users to use, like Simplicity. The departments offered network drives, and then more recently, TAMU opened up their Office 365 environment. So we realize we have users with data stored in a variety of places, and today's focus is to try to propose the best practice method around using Office 365 applications. So today's agenda, we'll go through a quick orientation about the Office 365 file environment, and then we'll move into some demos of some of the features that you might not be aware of, even if you use Office 365. And then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session, but feel free along the way to open the chat conversation bubble in Teams and ask your question. We have on the call, the meeting with us today, Bailey Teeter, our IT communications and training coordinator. And so if she can answer the question during the presentation, she'll do so. If not, we'll cover it at the Q&A. And then we'll do a wrap up and let you know about our upcoming training event on Tuesday. So in the Microsoft 365 environment, there's really three key areas where data is stored or files are stored and presentable or shared with others. Those three main applications are OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. Today, we're mostly going to focus on OneDrive and Teams because that's really taking place of traditional storage places you may have had your files stored previously. SharePoint is really the mechanism behind Teams, but it also has an interface of itself where intranets can be created, where documents can be stored between large groups of people. But overall, between these applications, there's a very consistent experience of viewing, editing, co-authoring, sharing, and even at some of the other advanced capabilities you can do with files and process and flow automations. Behind all this is enterprise security, compliance, and manageability that IT has to manage. We have to manage confidential information. We have to verify information that is HIPAA, for example, is being properly stored and is not being exposed to those that shouldn't have access to it. So behind all the scenes, there's all these security components that are working to help protect your data, secure the data, and assure those that shouldn't have access are gaining access to the data. So this slide kind of gives you a rough feel of what kinds of data files go where. And we'll start over on the left side with OneDrive. OneDrive is really where you put the personal documents that you're working on. It could be drafts or just files that you maintain for your work function. Really, that's where all your files kind of start. So even if you're drafting a PowerPoint or a teaching lesson or a draft proposal document for research or something of that sort, you're usually starting that in a draft mode and you're working on it for some period of time. OneDrive is where you really want to start saving that file or creating that file. Why? Because even though you're storing it, and we'll show you this later, to a folder on your computer called OneDrive, that's actually being real-time synchronized to the Office 365 cloud. And when I say real-time, I mean real-time. Also, you will be able to access that file from any device, from any interface, from anywhere in the world. So if you go home and you didn't take your work laptop with you, and you're like, boy, I really had a new idea I need to add to that document, you can just fire up your web browser on your home computer, and I'll show you later how you can access that file and edit it quickly. But really, this is where you should start all your files. They're replicated from all your devices, and they're stored in the cloud. So you have multiple versions, multiple backups, and we'll get into that in detail later. Then we move into your Teams application. Teams does a variety of things. It does video and chat. It also has a host of applications you can add within Teams to do various automation and workflow and collaboration type activities with others. This is really where you work in a team or in a group mode with people around files. If your department had a network file server and you had folders where you shared files with others in your department, this is where those files have been moved. They've been moved or will be moved, depending on your scheduling for migration, into Teams, because Teams is the place you collaborate. So these are typically files people are working on as groups in a project manner or on a special agenda. I heard the other day we have people using Teams for search committees. And so they create a team for that search committee. They put all the relative documents relative to that search committee's effort in there. All the chats and conversations going on are also within that team. So Teams, by definition, is where you're working together as a team. And then last, as I said, SharePoint is where files go to be really publicly communicated to larger groups of people. In the example here, they've got intranet sites or publishing type sites or communication type sites. This could be an organization-wide type site. It could be a department level site. It could even be a project team level site. The interesting thing to note about all of these applications is that at any point you wish to share or collaborate with others on a file that's stored in any of these applications, you can do so. And that includes external and internal people that you work with. This next slide gives you kind of an overview of the various features and functions that are provided to you if you're storing your files in OneDrive or Teams. If you're just storing your files on a network drive somewhere or personal hard drive or a USB device, you're not going to have these capabilities. They just don't exist. So as I mentioned earlier, you have a lot of versioning history, and I'll show you that for your files. Your files are automatically synced for offline access from any device. You can co-author, or as I like to say, simultaneously edit files, and we'll show you that in a moment, as well as externally sharing. And if you have a mobile device, all these applications can be installed for free on your mobile device, and you can use them to access your documents as well. There are file level permissions as to who has access to what. Most of the interfaces support what we call drag and drop transfer. So if you had an email, somebody emailed you a document, you could drag that into your desktop and then drag it over or into your OneDrive folder, or if you had OneDrive open in your web browser, drag it into your web browser and upload it into a folder in OneDrive. Talking about file spaces, this is what this last icon is mentioning. Office 365 supports up to 100 gig file. Also, within OneDrive, each user has access to 5 terabytes of space. That's a lot of files. We know some people have more than that, and that can be increased as needed per individual user. So these are just some of the key features that we'll want to demonstrate here as we move into the demonstration phase of the presentation. So what I'm going to try to do is give you some of the examples of these features and functions through the various different applications, but also to show you how to verify that your Office 365 applications are using your Agrilifeit account, because we realize some people who migrated from the college were beginning to use TAMU's Office 365, and we want to make sure the data from those applications have been migrated, and also that your applications are using your Agrilifeit account. So with that, I'm going to cut over to a desktop and share with you the demonstration screen. Let's see, this is it here. All right, so here I have Microsoft Teams pulled up, and I'm in the Files view. I'm not going to focus on that in the moment. I'm going to go down to the bottom right corner here, and I'm going to click on the OneDrive icon. And what this is showing is my OneDrive stream, if you will. It's basically showing recent files that it has synced or updated for some reason. But also from here, you'll note you can go open your OneDrive folder. You can also view it online through your web browser and access various settings and settings for OneDrive. If I click on Open OneDrive folder, you'll see on my local computer here, if you look in the side here, there's a quick link to OneDrive, Texas A&M Agrilifeit. And then there are all my files. This is where I keep all my data that I work on historically and currently. And you'll also notice in these status column different kinds of icons that mean different things. For example, this one means that with the solid circle with the check mark, it's signifying I want to keep a physical copy of these files on my hard drive. If I toggle that back, it goes to a hollow circle with a check mark. What that means is the file is not actually physically on the device anymore. It's only in the cloud, but you don't really notice the difference because if you click on the file, it's going to open it. Also, you'll notice there's a little symbol on the right of this, and that signifies that you've shared the file or the folder with people. So if you look at this listing here, I only have a few files actually shared with people, but the others are not. And in this case, it's signifying that I actually have the file open currently on this computer. And I'm also sharing it and co-authoring with Bailey. So if I switch to my Word document real quick of that document, you'll notice up here that it's showing a symbol that Bailey is also in the document. So if there's anybody else in the document, all their little icons will show up, and you can hover over them to see who they are. You can go to location, and it will take you in the document where she currently is. We can basically be working on this document together, and Bailey could be editing the document simultaneously as I am. And that's just an example of how the document can be open and being edited by others at the same time. If you'll notice, Bailey's adding numbers in one row and I'm adding names in another. Kind of a silly example, but she's seeing what I'm seeing and I'm seeing what she's seeing. The other thing to note is autosave is always on files that you have in Teams or OneDrive. The concept of opening and saving a file are kind of gone. You don't have to save anymore because the document's auto-saving every time something's being added or edited in the document. To show that, this is the undo script. It's showing what's being added to this document since I've had it open by me. And I can scroll back and pick a place and say undo. If you'll notice, it undid what I had previously added to the document. And so that's an example of how having your files in OneDrive and Teams is literally keeping character level, if you will, versions of the document. If I go click up here on the document name, I can go to version history, and I can also see where I'm storing it at and change that. But if I go to version history, it will bring up the different versions of this document in its history. And you could essentially go to one of these and say open version, and that's what I just did. I pulled up a previous version. I can also hit compare or restore on that document. So this is an example of how you can go back in time and get to that document very, very quickly at any point in its lifetime. Back to OneDrive. One of the ways that you can tell that you are configured with your Agrilifeit account is to click on the OneDrive icon, and you'll notice it says Texas A&M Agrilifeit. If it doesn't say that, if it says Texas A&M, then you're still configured to talk to the TAMU Office 365 account. If that's the case for your particular workstation, we encourage you to contact our help desk, and we can help you to change that. Basically, we would go into settings, we would unlink your PC from what would say Texas A&M, and we would unlink it, and then we would relink it to Texas A&M Agrilifeit, and that would set your OneDrive account or application, if you will, to be assured it's connected to Agrilifeit. Similarly, in Teams, if you look up at the upper right corner of your Teams when you have it open, you'll see next to your name which Office 365 environment you're in. In this case, it says Texas A&M Agrilifeit, so I'm logged into to my Agrilifeit account. So that's how you can assure yourself that you are logged into Agrilifeit. If you're not, you can hit sign out, and then you would be prompted to log in with your Agrilifeit credentials. So going back again, we talked about how we realized per a survey, people had information shared in various places. They had it shared potentially in Simplicity, they had it shared in network folders or in the TAMU OneDrive, and in some cases, Google Drive. During your migration, depending on the process or your particular situation, our team should have given you some pointers and advice on how to migrate your files when you choose to do so. For example, some of you may have data stored in Google Drive, and you want to begin to use the features and functions of OneDrive and Office 365, which are much more elaborate because they're integrated with the Office applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. The quick and easy way to do that, frankly, is to go to your Google Drive folder. I don't have one on this PC, but if I did, you would go to the Google Drive folder. You could then do a Control A on that folder, and that would select all your folders. You could do a right-click copy, and then go to your OneDrive folder. And your OneDrive folder might be blank. Mine's full, obviously. And you would do a right-click paste. And that would, on your computer, start to copy all your Google files, not delete them, but copy them over to your OneDrive folder. And then OneDrive, your OneDrive application would immediately start synchronizing those into the cloud. I did that earlier on this PC. I had 15 gigs of files in these folders. And all those documents moved in probably about 25 minutes from the cloud to this hard drive. So I actually told it to put a copy of the file on the hard drive because this is a laptop and maybe I want to edit my files while on an airplane where I don't have internet connectivity. So I've told it to keep a copy physically on my hard drive. Another option is if you don't see yourself in that situation, you want to be highly secure with your data, you could tell it, don't keep a copy on my hard drive. And while you'll still see folders and you'll still see files with these hollow circles, that means that the file's not actually located on the hard drive. This is just a link to go pull it from the cloud to your system. So if you're a security type minded person, you're like, well, I travel a lot and boy, if my laptop got stolen, somebody cracked into it, it wouldn't be good if they had access to my data. You could configure your OneDrive files so that they're not actually on the system, which is kind of unique. If you had files in other folders on your computer, say you had them in your My Documents folder, you could do the same thing. You could come over here, do a Control A, right-click, copy, go back to your OneDrive folder, and drop them in. Note that when you do that process, you're not actually deleting any files anywhere, but later you may want to go back and clean them out of those folders you copied from, just to keep your hard drive space free. So jumping back to Teams, I'm in what they call the Files view, and there's different context within the file view. I'm in what they call the Recent view. What this is showing is every file I've opened quite a long time back in history in chronological order as to when I opened them. So the unique thing about Microsoft Office 365 as opposed to other methods you've probably used in the past is you can kind of get away from the mentality of knowing in exact detail what folder, subfolder, or location you've stored things. Because with Office 365 and Teams and the applications like Word and otherwise, you can search for documents based on their contents or their file names, or you can do like I'm doing here and quickly go back to files you may have recently worked on without ever having to really remember, other than I worked on that file last Thursday and you could quickly get back to it. So this is a unique view of looking at your files as you worked on them chronologically. You'll also note it is telling you where it is stored. So this file is stored in my OneDrive folder. If I go further down, this drive is also my OneDrive. This one is in a team under a folder. It's not on my hard drive. This one is being shared to me by one of my colleagues from their OneDrive folder. But since they've shared it to me and I've accessed it before, it's on the list and I have access to it. These are files in other teams I'm a member of. So you can kind of get a feel for where things are, but also get to them quickly. This is another colleague has shared a file with me. So this is a really powerful view. I use it a lot to get back to files that I need to get to. Another quick method of an example of getting access to files you've worked on in the past is you can go to any of the Office applications like Word, and if you have them in your toolbar like I do, you can right-click on the icon, and it will also show you a chronological view of files you've worked on within Word. Same thing works for Excel. In fact, it's so unique, you can be on different computers. Say you have multiple computers and you worked on a file at the office, but you have a laptop at home, and it will synchronize these listings between different devices. So this is actually a file I worked on the other day on a completely different computer system that I operate. The other unique thing is if you're a person that works on a specific file or spreadsheets, for example, all the time, you can pin that document so that it is always in the list. It doesn't filter off. It's always at the top usually, and you can just quickly go into it. If you're an avid, and that's that file, I just opened it. And this is actually my meeting notes for today. But if you also open up Word without actually opening a document, for example, you'll also see a history of files here. You may wish to open a blank document, or you may want to go back to a file you've recently been working on. And here's the same view as right-clicking on the icon, and you can even go further back. So you can see how Office 365 is really keeping track of where your documents are for you, how to get quickly back to them, and how to share, which I'll go into here. But I wanted to demonstrate the search function real quick. If you're looking for a document, you're like, boy, I don't see it in the list. It was a while back, I worked on it, and I really need some help finding that file. In Teams, when you search for something, you'll search messages, it'll also search people, but it'll also search files. And so here I typed in annual budget, and I've come up with all the annual budget files I've ever created, or any files that have the term annual budget in it. So you can see how powerful that was. If I type person's name, I search on that, I'll find chats from that individual. I'll find his record, which I can click on and go to chats, or I can click on files and it will show me various things that he's chatted, files that he shared with me. So we talked earlier about sharing files, and I had that file already open and shared with Bailey. But I wanted to demonstrate how easy that is to do just from your computer. There's various ways to do it. I can take this file and also real quick, sorry to jump back again, you can also check version history from file view here as well. This will bring up a little window and it shows all the previous versions of this document. From here, you can also select to restore or download a copy of that version. But this file we want to share. So here I would select share, brings up the window to share that document. And it's going to give us an option to, I don't know, this computer is a little slow today. It should give us the option to set various sharing attributes as well as select the people we want to share. So first I'm going to set the attributes for the share. If I click on this, I can control different things. For example, I can block the person from downloading it. I can allow or disallow them from editing it. I can also determine who can get the file, because when you file share to an individual, it's going to send them an email with a link. Well, let's say they forwarded that email to someone else that you didn't want to see the file. If you shared it with specific people, then only that person can open that link. There's another option, people with existing access, which means if you're in a team and you're trying to share it, then if people are in the team with you, then by default they can see it. Or people just within Agrilifeit can see it. By default, it's set to this. And most of the time, if you're sharing with someone, you're probably going to want to let them edit. So you hit apply, comes back, and then you can type in person's name. And it will bring up the directory in Agrilifeit. So these are all the people that have Bailey somewhere in their name. Of course, Bailey Teeter is who I want to share it with. But also to prove that you can send it to anybody, I'm going to share it to like my Yahoo account. And down here I can put a message. And I'll hit send. That is how you share a file. That file now is being shared in an email to both those individuals, and they will click on the link to open and view the file. When they do so, I actually get an email saying that they opened the file. So I know that they read it, or I know that they accessed it. So if you're sharing something with a group of people and you want to make sure they all actually read what you sent them or what have you, that's a unique way of seeing, who has opened the file and who hasn't. So we talked about auto-saving, we talked about versioning, we talked about sharing, and we also talked about collaborating. When we went over recent files and teams. So we're coming up on about 40 minutes into this presentation. The last thing I wanted to show you is how when you're creating a new document, you can share or how you would save a file to a particular location. Because if you're trying to share or save a document with a team versus something that you're just working on individually, there's two ways to do that. So some of us come to work every day and we start new files. And we're going to do a memo to somebody from me, etc. If you'll notice, autosave isn't on right now because I haven't saved this file and it doesn't know technically what to save it as. So I'm going to go to File and Save. And you'll notice it's bringing up two things at the very top. First is OneDrive, my OneDrive folder. Second are sites, which are the teams I'm a member of. So if I wanted to share this document inside my engineering team, I would select that and find one of the folders I wanted to save this file into. And I would give it a name and I'd hit save. Likewise, if I wanted to share it because I'm only working on it myself, I would go to my OneDrive folder, and I have a technique where I have a working files folder of things I'm currently working on, and I would give it a name and store it here. Alternatively, I could do the traditional method, which I don't recommend. I could browse this local hard drive and store it somewhere on the local hard drive. I wouldn't advise that because if your hard drive fails, or if your hard drive or it's on a laptop and your laptop's stolen, then you've lost that file. You're also not going to have versioning, and you're not going to have backups. So if you're a user that stores it on a local path that is not OneDrive or not in Teams, you're really putting your files at a lot of risk. You're probably also, if you're risk averse, you're trying to do a lot of work to make sure you don't lose files. I met many employees that carry around a USB stick, and I go, "What's that USB stick?" "Oh, I store all my documents on there." I go, "Really? Why do you do that?" "Well, I have 3 PCs, and I use it at the office and I use it at home, or I use it in the lab." Well, that's very dangerous because USB devices fail, first off, and they get washed in the laundry and they get lost. Not a very secure method. Other employees I've seen use external USB hard drives. Again, more overhead. You're having to maintain another device. You're trying to secure that device. You're hoping that device, which is mechanical, doesn't fail. Just like your hard drive or the chip or the SSD on your computer can fail. So the best thing to do with the least amount of overhead and the biggest value gain is store it in OneDrive or Teams, because you're going to have it in the cloud, multiple versions, and access from anywhere, and the ability to share and collaborate with anyone at any time. So with that, I'm going to wrap up presentation for today, and we'll move into the Q&A part of our presentation, and we'll go to chat channel and see if there are any questions that you may have. If you do, you can go to the chat and resume, or excuse me, ask any questions you have. If you don't, we'll go through some common ones we get. And it looks like Dr. Silva is asking a question, so we'll pause and wait for that. So a good question. Dr. Silva asked, does Simplicity offer the same security as Office 365? It's very similar, but it's also missing all the features and functionalities that we went through today. Simplicity is like what I call a level 1 cloud storage provider. They basically offer the ability to dump your data files into folders locally that get synced to the cloud, very much like OneDrive does. And it, to some extent, has some backup, and I'm I'm not really remembering how much of a versioning kind of feature it has. The one main issue with Simplicity, if you haven't heard yet, is the system contract for Simplicity is ending in December. So everyone in the TAMU system is losing access to Simplicity. That's been communicated by TAMU. It's been communicated multiple times by Agrilifeit. So if you haven't heard yet, Simplicity is going away. And you need to be migrating into OneDrive. We've actually put together a how-to guide on how to do that, and I kind of covered it during the presentation of basically copying your Simplicity folders over into your OneDrive folder, which, depending on how much data you have, may take a couple of minutes to half an hour to do that copy. But once you start it, OneDrive immediately starts to sync that to the cloud. It's like we have a couple more questions coming in. Yeah, I think Bailey will post here in the chat in a minute. There you go. She's got the how-to guide we produced. And also, Bailey, if you put the link up, and I can jump to our website real quick since we have a little time. Let's see here. Oh, and one thing I forgot to demonstrate, and I'll just show it real quick, is I meant to go to the Office.com portal to show you how when you log in, it also has a view of recent files you've worked on. So even if you're away from your computer device and you need to get to that Word document you were working on at the office, you can click on it and bring it up in the web version of Microsoft Word and add and edit that document. And as I mentioned, there's really no save button. You just close that window and you're done. Now, some of you may be going, I'm not sure I buy that. So let me open that file again. There's the line I added to that file right there. All I did was add it, and I closed the browser or that tab. I didn't have to hit save. It's instantaneous saving of the content of your file. So when you first log into the web version of Office.com, it'll show you the top docs you worked on and also recent docs you worked on, shared, or which are documents people have shared with you. So remember when I said when you share a document with someone, that sends them an email with a link? Well, what if that happened to you and you deleted the file and it's 4 days later and you're like, wow, where's that email with that link that Alan shared to me? Well, rather than going and dumpster diving in your deleted items folder in Outlook, which could take some time, either go to Teams or go to Office.com and look at the recent or shared list of files that are shared with you, and you'll see all those files that anybody has ever shared with you. Also, there's a way to tag files as your favorites, and they'll show up here as well. So the whole ecosystem of files within Teams Office 365 is extremely powerful, and that's really what we want to demonstrate here today. So do we have any other questions at this point? If not, feel free to send any questions that you might have about anything to do with the migration or how to use files. You can send it to itanswers@ag.tamu.edu, and I'll personally receive that and address it myself. Or if you're having a problem and you need support, I'm probably not the best person to contact, given I'm in lots of meetings, but you can definitely contact our support desk at our website. which I was going to share. Let me bring that up. Those of you who may not have seen that site yet, this is our Agrilifeit website, where we have a categorization of all our support information. News is a very powerful place where you can go read all the alerts and notifications that we are sending out to you as users. And we even have archives of all those events down here at the bottom of the page. By default, y'all all are signed up to receive our IT news notifications, but if for some reason you're not, on any page you can go and sign up to receive our service alerts and whatnot. At any point in time on any of our pages, you can submit a support ticket. You can do a live chat with one of our technicians by filling this out and starting a chat, and also access a large amount of information that we have to support you. As a new user to Office 365, if that's your case, we encourage you to look at our new users guide that we put together for you earlier this year. And it has kind of a chronological context of focus of things you might want to familiarize yourself with on the first day after migration, things within the first week, things within the first month, and then finally optional things like setting up your mobile devices, installing Office 365 on your personal devices, and also our training materials that we have for new users. So we put a lot of effort into the site. And so it's firstcallhelp.tamu.edu. The search will help you find pretty much everything that you're looking for in terms of any topic you can type in. And it's fairly efficient and effective. Bailey has worked on this site to make the guides and the how-tos work really well for you. And this is an example of one of our news alerts talking about, the change with Duo for the Remember Me feature. You probably heard about that. We'll be implementing that on next Monday in our environment. So if you ever need to access news or see alerts about services, please go to this site. We have our IT service alerts section always on every page, front and center, and you should be able to be well informed about activities going on in our environment. We also have a security blog that our security team puts out monthly, and it covers a wide array of topics. So we encourage you to come by and visit and see those. And lastly, want to definitely give a shout out to our next orientation course, which will be next Tuesday. And what we'll be focusing on in that presentation is the IT self-service features that we offer through our self-service portal called Agrilifeit People. And so we'll show you what features that it offers and how you can set up email aliases or create a Microsoft team or configure various other aspects of your IT services that we offer there. So we welcome you back next Tuesday if you haven't signed up for that event, and we'll show you how you can actually manage your IT services yourself without having to wait and talk to an IT person. And I'll pause 1 minute because Bailey's putting some information in on the chat, but I suspect it has something to do with where to go to sign up for this event. Yes, that's what the case is. So if you haven't RSVP'd for that event next Tuesday, please do so, and we'd be happy to see you attend later. With that, I'm going to conclude our presentation for today, and thank you all for attending. And again, if you have any questions, you can send them to itanswers@ag.tamu.edu or go to our firstcallhelp.tamu.edu support site and talk to one of our support technicians. Again, I appreciate your attendance and hope you have a great day. Thank you.